Welcome back to the Triple J Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Rasmussen, and I'm excited to welcome two guests today for our episode, both teammates of the 1997 NCAA National Championship team for the Arizona Wildcat men's basketball program, Bennett Davison and Josh Pastner. Bennett is a returning guest and a familiar face here with Triple J Sports Podcast. Bennett is a California native who grew up in Sebastopol, played for some familiar coaches, and a friend of mine that I had an opportunity to work out with during my collegiate career, and has been on the episode, had an episode before. And I was fortunate enough to get to do an episode today with he and his teammate, Josh Pastner, who has gone from a walk-on at Arizona under legendary coach Lute Olson and winning a national championship in 1997 with that team to becoming a grad assistant and then an assistant coach and onto a very successful head coaching career at the collegiate ranks. Not only has he been successful, he became one of the youngest head coaches in college basketball at the age of 31 when he got his first job at Memphis, where he went to 4 NCAA tournament appearances and won multiple conference titles. Then a very successful stint in the ACC with the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets program, and where I think he notably won the ACC Coach of the Year and an ACC tournament championship in 2021, before now taking over the UNLV Running Rebel men's basketball program, which it brings a crazy close connection to my heritage and background of getting to play for the legendary Coach Jerry Tarkanian, and where Coach Tark made history with his Running Rebels and the national championship team from back in the day. So Coach Pastner was kind enough to give his time during a busy schedule and in between film sessions and practices and preparation and all that fun stuff. So very, very grateful for Josh to take the time to sit down with Bennett and I and revisit their national championship run. And like a true polished coach, Josh has lots of great insights, his perspective on how the team came together, the evolution of the season in the Pac-10, and then how things unfolded in the NCAA tournament. Being on a team as a walk-on with guys that eventually became, huge names. None bigger than Mike Bibby, Miles Simon, Jason Terry, Michael Dickerson, AJ Bramlett, and of course Bennett were among many of the names that people are familiar with today, and many of whom had, obviously successful careers. On a team like that, Josh was notably one of the almost player coaches, as Bennett describes, helping guys and pushing guys and challenging guys. And so it's no surprise that he's gone on to have a successful coaching career. And I think for me, it's an absolute treat to have an opportunity to listen to Bennett and Josh talk about that run, share some stories, and revisit some of those games, and from their perspective talk about what has not been done since, which is a team to go on and win the national championship while knocking off 3 number 1 seeds along the way. Really cool story. I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Thanks again, Josh, for making the time. Thanks again, Bennett, for jumping on and doing your thing again, my friend. And to all of the Triple J Studios and Sports Podcast fans and audience out there, thanks so much for tuning in. hit the subscribe button and follow us on YouTube and all the social media. And I hope you all enjoyed the episode. All right. Welcome back to the Triple J Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Rasmussen, and I am back today and really excited because I've got two guests with me, a repeat and a familiar face in Bennett Davison, longtime friend and Californian, and a guy who used to kick my ass in workouts many years ago, probably still could. And his longtime and former teammate from his days at Arizona and now current head coach at UNLV, who is not only been gracious enough to grant us his time to do this podcast, but taken away from the precious time that he needs to prep for his upcoming game on Saturday. So, Josh, man, thank you so much for being here, my friend.
Nope, thanks for having me, and obviously do anything for Bennett. As you mentioned about us being teammates, he's one of the best teammates ever for anybody. And, he's just an awesome guy, and we're just I can tell you this, and I know we'll dig into it, in the 1997 national championship, which is what we're going to obviously talk about, that title run for the University of Arizona. And deservedly so. People talk about the Mike Bibby, who's, Jason Terry, Miles Simon, who's the most outstanding player in that tournament. Michael Dickerson. I mean, three of those four guys were lottery picks. One, Miles Simon, was a second-round pick. And, of course, the guards get a lot of talk about and hype and all that. And, as I mentioned, deservedly so. But I can assure you, and this is from a guy that's in my 15th year as a Division I head basketball coach, so I have somewhat of an understanding of the game. We do not win those games or win the national championship without Bennett Davison. He and A.J. Bramlett.
Don't forget about A.J. and those guys.
No, I was about to say he and A.J. Bramlett were our starting front court, kind of, the 4 and 5 at that point. And they were the unsung heroes who just did all the dirty work on both sides of the ball. And both guys reminded me of like the offensive linemen, like in football, where like Tom Brady or whomever, the quarterback or the running back, they're going to get all the praise and credit and all the highlights, and everyone's going to, they're going to get all the deals, the marketing deals. And whereas, that's what Bennett Davison and A.J. Bramlett were. They were kind of like the offensive linemen. They just pass protected, blocked, opened up gaps and holes for the running back so they could get all the highlights. And so part of the reason the success of our team and for those individual players was based on Bennett Davison and A.J. Bramlett.
Josh is so
now I don't know how much they're all going to trust you with that many compliments of Bennett. I mean, let's be honest. But no, that's I think it's a great place to start. And as a coach who, obviously coaching now at one of the programs, you and I have a lot of overlap. Obviously, I got the fortune of playing for the legend that was Tark the Shark. You're now coaching at that legendary program. Bennett and I share the same experience of playing for Coach Burton. Different types of experience in that sense,
coaches,
but
same styles,
yeah,
but different
for
games.
sure. But as a veteran coach and someone who moved into the coaching ranks, I'm sure that run and what you guys did at Arizona and that whole, I would call it an adventure, but really experience of winning at the highest level and that like high that you get out of winning the one thing that can't be taken from you, it really kind of changes a lot of your confidence about what you can accomplish in life. But it starts with a lot of the little things, and it starts at the beginning with a belief and working behind the scenes. So talk a little about the beginning of that year. I mean, you guys, Josh, obviously you mentioned some of those names, Mike Bibby and Miles Simon, obviously Bennett and AJ and Jason and some of these other guys, and there's more names. But that run that you guys went on, it wasn't smooth sailing. Not that it ever is. Talk about kind of how the beginning of the season, playing for Coach, that is also a legend, and how that season started, and what from your perspective was kind of the early expectations that you guys were set with.
Yeah, well, a couple things. Obviously, the start of the season, that year, we were really a young team. Now, obviously, Coach Olson, and again, things are different in this day and age of people who weren't around at that time. They can't even fathom how it was back then, because now everything's NIL. You don't even know what team you're going to have next year because every kid could go in the portal now. It's just so different. Back then, believe it or not, the projection or the thought process by Coach Olson was that it wasn't that 97 team was going to be the team that was going to be good to compete for a championship. It was going to be the 98 team because you had a young team. Everyone was going to come back. You're going to build. And that was the year we were going to fight for being one of the best teams in the country. Obviously, again, in this day and age, that's unheard of to think you would have your whole team back because everyone would be in the portal. But back then, that's how it was. And so we did start the year. Actually, we started the year okay because, believe it or not, we had the kid Miles Simon, who was the most outstanding player, but was ineligible for the first part of the year because, with there academically at University of Arizona. So he did not get eligible until mid-year. But our opening game of that season was against North Carolina. It was in the Hall of Fame in Springfield, Massachusetts. And they had a starting freshman point guard as well, too, at the time, Ed Cota, who was coming into North Carolina like Mike Bibby, one of the highest ranked, those two are the highest ranked point guards in the freshman class in that year coming in. And we were heavy underdogs because we were the younger team. We didn't have Miles Simon, who was one of our main guys coming back from the previous year. And we opened up the season with a great win. Great win. Mike Bibby put on it was coming out party. It was on national television. Dick Vitale was there, all that stuff. And it was his coming out party. And we really started the year. That kind of got us the set of the trajectory of how good we could be. All that being said, it was actually North Carolina's coach, Dean Smith. That was his final year. Not only do we start the year with him, ending him on a loss, we also ended his career, God rest his soul, because we ended up beating him on a 4. But we in that first semester without Miles Simon, we actually played pretty well. And we had a loss or two, but we actually were playing well. And I thought it was an adjustment part of it, because of Bennett's ability to guard, because of his, Bennett was really quick twitch athletically. He could really guard ball screens. And we didn't do as much of this back then. Things are different again now, even on the floor. But like he could switch onto and guard a point guard. Now we didn't do that as much back then, and now a lot of it's now switching in this day and age. But he was able to do that. His quickness, so he could guard multiple. Bennett could really guard 1 through 5 back in the day. But we had a good start of the year. It was our struggles hit was when Miles Simon came back, not because Miles was not a good player. It's because our chemistry was going to be affected, and our we were just trying to figure
distribution.
Ball distribution. So he came back. And Miles Simon needs the ball. He's a high-level guy. He needs the ball, and he started the previous year for Arizona that went to the Sweet 16, and so he was coming back not to come off the bench, and then
JT had to move the 6 man.
That's right, and that's when Jason Terry went to Coach Olson and volunteered. He raised his hand and said, "I'm volunteering I'll come off the bench because this is my only way this is going to work, and allow Miles to start." And so there was a stretch there early on in the Pac-10 season. Now, when we played in the Pac-10, it was an incredible league, and it was a true Pac-10 round robin. And we struggled to start the year. We got better in the middle of the year, But believe it or not, before we went to the NCAA tournament, because at that time there was no Pac-10 tournament. We didn't have that. We were us and the Ivy League were the last two leagues not to have a conference tournament. That's obviously changed now. But our last two games we played at Stanford and at Cal on the road, and we lost both games. And going into the NCAA tournament. That being said, even though we lost both games, we actually played really, really well. And so Stanford and Cal were really good teams. And I'll never forget, we were playing Cal, and I don't know if Bennett even remembers this. And we were playing Cal not at their, where they play now is Hospital.
Palace, yeah.
Yeah, it was at the time we played them off their home because they were redoing their arena. So it was at the Cal Palace there. And they beat us, and it came down to the very end, and the crowd went going berserk. And I'll never forget, because Bennett knows this, Coach Olson's, he's a good looking dude. He never got disheveled. He had huge hands. I mean, he really looked like he was a movie star. I mean, he was just such a good looking, and the way he dressed and handled.
John Wayne in him.
Absolutely. I mean, it was
never used foul language. None of that.
No, he was just amazing. But after the game, we lose the game, and the fans are starting to rush on the floor. And I don't know how much Bennett remembers this, but there was a dad that comes with he's got his son on his shoulders, and I was by Coach Olson, and he comes just like cursing out Coach, like as a fan, just screaming at him because it was crazy what he was saying to Coach, and Coach is ready to turn and deck him. And I've never seen Coach lose his cool. I really think if the dad didn't have his kid on his phone, and obviously the guy was drinking because with stuff he was saying and doing, and it was just, he obviously had too much to drink there. And because of the crowd rushed the floor, I'm telling you, if the guy didn't have the son on his shoulders, Coach would have punched him in the face of stuff. He probably needed to get punched based on what he was saying. But there was a security guard came, and I actually told Coach, I actually kind of went in front of Coach because I could see where this was escalating. And I told the guy, man, go back to this, leave us alone. And I remember that vividly, and it was that type of thing. And I remember us going in the locker room after the game, and there was some tension. I don't know if Bennett remembers this. Coach Johnson was our assistant coach at the time. Oh, yeah. That was his scout, and lose the game. And he went in there and ripped the scout team. And he was not – it was just so much tension. It was a Saturday game, and Sunday was a selection show. And I remember that, and we didn't get together on Sunday of the selection show either. I remember just watching it on my TV because there was a tension from the game from Saturday. How we lost, we lose 2 in a row. Coach Johnson was so mad at the scout team. He went in front of everybody and ripped everybody. And then obviously that altercation with Coach Olson was ready to. It was just a lot. There was a lot of tension. And then Sunday, was the next day of the selection show. So it was interesting before we even got to the tournament. Just kind of, those deals going on before we even got playing. And it actually went into, so our first round game, we were playing South Alabama and in Memphis, Tennessee. And South Alabama was coached by Eric Musselman's father, Bill Musselman. Yeah. And Eric Musselman's now the head coach at USC, but his father, longtime coach, and they ran 500 sets. But because of how we played on Thursday, Saturday, the tension in the team, obviously we practiced and all those good things beforehand, but the tension of the team and everything, we were down 10 points with under 5 minutes to go versus South. We did not play well in that first game. We were bad. We were lethargic. They slowed the ball
down a lot of, like you said, a bunch of sets, and everything was different.
They ran so many sets. We were lethargic. They had us on our heels. And I remember, and again, I was a freshman, and Bennett, obviously coming from junior college, it was his first year too. But, a lot of the talk at the time in Tucson and even nationally was because Coach Olson had lost multiple first-round games, being a higher seed, and we were the 4th seed. So they were the 13th seed. And the way it was going, it looked like it was going to go down that road again, and that we were about to take an L. And we were down 10, and something just turned our energy. I remember there was a timeout. Coach, there was just tension. Like it was still remaining tension. And coach said something, and Miles said something.
There's no flow to it.
Yeah, in those last like 4.5 minutes, 4 minutes and 45 seconds, we just it was like a turn of our jets on, and we just went in another direction, ended up beating them, and the rest from there is history.
That's so much in that. It's so cool to hear. Like I was doing some research, and I was looking at the box scores from the season, and I was wondering early in the year, like why some of the numbers with Miles Simon looked off, and so that makes sense. Like what you obviously filled in a key component as to why the scoring, numbers were the way they were. I think being a coach, that's a huge adjustment to insert a player of that caliber that's proven that's not going to come in and take a back seat to anybody, nor do you really want them to. You want them to assert themselves, but you got to figure out. So that makes a lot of sense. Amazing story on the part of Jason Terry, to raise his hand and be the one.
You got to remember that Miles, and Bennett knows this. Miles is very. I mean, and we both of us love Miles to death. He's unbelievable. What makes him so great is he's stubborn. He's tough-minded, and so he was not. To your point, Phil, he was not going to take a back seat. And he wasn't going to take it back. He wasn't not going to start, and he was not going to have the ball in his hands a lot either. So but that's what made him great. His toughness, his mindset, his stubbornness.
His
leadership. So that was all part of it too. And that's why you're right about that. That's why you make. Good for you for doing your homework. It's why he struggled a little bit to get going, and why our team we were kind of like a roller coaster a little bit there for about a month, because we were out of sync. We were out of chemistry. We didn't have great alignment because I think everyone was trying to figure each other out.
We had no juniors. So it was me, Miles, and Mike Dickerson. We were the only juniors. Then you had AJ and JT and everybody, and Donnell, and everybody else was freshmen.
Yeah, that's right.
Easier, certain roles I think are harder. You talk about guards. Big guys obviously depend on getting the ball from the guards, or just go get it off the glass. And depending on the type of big guy,
which is to go get my own offensive rebounds. Josh remembers that.
That was you.
Rebound you can shoot. Other than that, Bennett, don't shoot.
It makes it easy to adjust if you're the get it off the glass type of guard. You can kind of just play and evolve. When you're dependent on having the ball in your hands or being fed, it is a bigger adjustment. And so, yeah, that makes sense. And obviously makes it even more special, the run that you guys did. You talked about the end of the season and that kind of struggle of those last couple of games, and almost sounding like it kind of clicked essentially in the first round game and the last 4 minutes. Was there a point during the season when Miles came back and you guys were playing and going where maybe you guys looked at each other and thought we were good enough to make a run, and then it was just figuring it out? Or was the most of that season you guys still trying to find the balance as a group, and then all of a sudden it finally clicked, like you said, kind of in that first round game? Like, was there a point in the season where something clicked for you guys?
Well,
Josh, let me start by something.
Go ahead.
As we all came in, we're getting to kind of know each other. Josh was saying how integral I was as a player. He was integral as a player, a student, and a mentor. So there were times where we would go out and we would have our practice in the preseason Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday nights, and he's like, "Who's coming to the gym?" I was like, "Yeah, whatever." And Mike Dickerson is out there, and Josh is going through a shot doctoring and a shooting form. And, as I'm doing this coaching now, you and Josh are going through the same thing. Is these kids, they come in and they have their certain shooting form. But when you go back to the basics and you have you say you go out in the first quarter and you miss the front of the rim 3 or 4 times and you're not shooting for the back of the rim. What Josh did was we would come in, and after our practices, we go home and we would drive back to the gym at 9:00 at night. And just getting shots up, we would put up another 150 to 250 shots. and this was a weekly basis. So finding our rhythm, it's almost like that Kobe saying, hey, I can get in 4 practices a day instead of 2 practices a day. Now I just built in twice the amount of time in. So the integral part was throughout the whole year, we were constantly working on our own individual stuff, which is that individual skills. And then practice, we didn't have to really work on all that much individual stuff. We could work on the team strategies and the full court press and the breaking the press because of that extra time that Josh was in the meetings. He was in the practices. He was in the locker rooms. He was kind of a cheat code. He was a coach and a doctor, shot doctor, and a integral part for getting us as players ready, where the coaches couldn't step in because of that time. But I just want to throw that in there.
No, I appreciate that, Bennett. Thank you for that. And Bennett's right. I remember when we like, and I don't know how much Bennett remembers this, but I do vividly. Early August when we were doing our pickup games, like in the summer there, we were all there playing pickup games. I remember one of the nights I grabbed the team, and I know they all probably looked at me like, "Who is this guy?"
Who is this dude?
Yeah, when I look back thinking that I did this, I think to myself, was I an idiot or what? But because here I am, an 18-year-old freshman, these guys. But I told the guy, hey man, we got to be in the gym all the time. We can win the national championship. I was telling the guys that in August. I remember telling everyone we're going to win the national championship. I was probably just. Bennett knows me well enough that I'm just always looking at the
He's the overly positive guy.
Yeah, so I was telling everyone we're going to win the national title. And so, no, but guys were really staying after a lot all the time. Coach Olson knew I wanted to be a coach. So, I was a walk-on, but I wasn't good enough to be in the games like Bennett was to be a main, rotational guy. But I was in there all the time with the guys, working with the guys late at night just to get extra shooting. I used to say I'm the all-time leading rebounder at Arizona based on guys the evening. I was running all over the place. Thankfully, usually Bibby would go through the bottom of the net most of the time. But to answer your question, there really wasn't a point in a season because where it just all clicked and came together. I think that's what is the beauty of what we were able to accomplish. And I say this all the time. Now, this, as I mentioned, I've been in the 15 years as a head coach at a high level. At 3 high-level schools, was working on television with NBC and ESPN and Turner, CBS Sports at a very high level. So, and I tell everyone that listens to me, the greatest run in the NCAA tournament history, because every time there's a tournament gets going on here, is the 1997 University of Arizona Wildcat basketball team for what we were able to accomplish. And what's amazing about the tournament is it's not always the best team that wins. It's the team that gets hot, that has the right momentum. Now, sometimes, obviously, the best team wins, but that year we were not the very best team from start to finish. We played great for about a 3-week period that it just started clicking. And let me just go through a few things on that season.
Well, we are the greatest University of Arizona basketball team in Arizona history.
That's correct. That is 100% correct. There is no question about that. That's why it's called One National Championship Way there, right in front of the arena. We talked about the South Alabama game. The next game in Memphis, Tennessee, we're playing College of Charleston, and again, people forget, and I don't know if fans, even the Tucson fans, even remember this. That was a hard fought game. That was it was a possession by possession game, constant lead changes, and we had to win the game late in the game via free throws. Mike Bibby made big free throws down there because they kept fouling because we would score up 2 and it was a time and score situation. And they were very well coached, similar to South Alabama, a lot of set plays, very well coached. And so we had to make a lot of free throws late. Mike Bibby made big free throws late in that game to allow us to advance. And then you go to the Sweet 16, which was in Birmingham, Alabama. Okay, and we were playing Kansas that year, who is a 1-loss Kansas team. The only loss they had was towards the end of the season against Missouri. Otherwise, if they had beaten that game, people were thinking they were going to go 40-0 for that season. And I'll never forget we were playing them on a Friday. We were leaving on a Wednesday, and you have to be there by a certain time for media day or you get fined. Two things that stick out to me on this before the game. One is our plane was late from Tucson. We had mechanical problems. So we couldn't leave on time, and we were going to get there like after our allotted practice time and media time, and we were just going to be fined. Two, Coach Olson said this in the media, in local media at the start of the week, because everyone was talking about Kansas. And I think this was the big change that got our guys' mindset.
He said, us confidence.
Yeah, that's right. He said, yeah, that's correct. But Coach Olson said, Kansas has to worry about us. We don't have to worry about Kansas. And in paraphrasing, and he used a few other words with that, but paraphrasing basically that Kansas has to worry about Arizona. We're not going to go in there we're not going in as the underdog. And I thought that comment really resonated with the guys. Now you got to remember, in that day and age, there is no cell phone, no social media. So he did it through the TV, through the newspapers. And our guys, obviously we were aware of and watched, you're watching television, whatever it may be. But he also told our guys that in one of our pre-practice meetings, when we're watching film, before we watched the film, he mentioned that to the guys. I really thought that was a critical moment, because all people talked about that year is about how great Kansas is and they're going to win the national championship. I think coaches' comments changed the mindset with our guys, and we actually went in there and believed we were going to beat Kansas. And I don't know how Bennett feels, because Bennett was the one who helped do it because he was on the floor. But at least from my perspective,
it's almost like you're supposed to lose, so why not go out there and just dive for every ball and make every pick and roll? Like, you're supposed to lose and go out there, but you look at the matchup. Like, where our game basketball back then was get a bunch of big guys, Scott Pollards and Rafe LaFrancis and Serge Zwicker and Nazem Muhammad and all these tall guys. But I mean, we were really undersized for those 4 and 5 positions. But the thing is, they had to keep up with us. I mean, for me, I knew I ran all day because I grew up playing soccer. So a basketball court was short for me. So running wasn't a problem. It was going out there with that mentality. It's like, guys, we're supposed to lose. What can you do wrong? You can't do anything wrong, but go out there and play hard. And that's all. I think that was that. Well, I remember those first 2 games were frustrating. It was kind of like you're running in mud kind of a thing. But then once we got
because the way their style was,
they were just big lumbering jacks. I mean, their 3-guard was my size.
And they ran play. They try to work the shot clock down to the very last second before they took a shot.
Yeah.
They just grind. They try to grind you.
Yep.
That's a tough way to play.
But let me just say this. When Bennett's right. We weren't bigger than most of the teams. We were faster and quicker, and that's what Coach Olson really believed: is speed and quickness beats, kind of strength and and size in a sense. And Bennett, just via the computer right now, you could through the Zoom, you can. He looks like he can still play, but Bennett was interesting. If you look at his body type, because of the speed and quickness, Bennett was very veiny. He had veins popping all through his body, through his legs, through his arms. Yep. So, if you ever needed to give blood, he was an easy.
It's like nurse's crack right here. Crack.
There was no problem finding the vein, but he just had that body structure, as I mentioned earlier in this interview, that he was very quick twitch, and his quickness of that, and so that mentality got us ready to play Kansas, because they were like the number 1 overall seed in a sense. And so, and as Jacques Vaughn was the starting point guard who played a long time in the NBA head coach, who's now back at Kansas as the associate coach. Kansas really struggled against our quickness on the perimeter. Like, they really struggled against Michael Dickerson. He drove by him multiple times. They had real problems guarding Michael Dickerson and getting to the rim. And at the very end of the game, we were up 3, and Kansas had 3 incredible looks. Because if the game went to overtime, I don't think we would have won the game. We had to win it in regulation. It was a very pro-Kansas crowd. And They had 3 incredible looks at the shot to tie the game, to send it to overtime.
With the offensive rebounds and putbacks, and they still missed.
Offensive rebound, kick out, offensive rebound, kick out, and they missed all 3. And by the grace of God, we were able to get the win.
Yeah.
Or the Cardiac Cats name. I mean, that's
yep.
That's
I still have that shirt actually.
That's such a momentum. Like, yeah, the momentum of a going into overtime when you're the team ahead. That's a killer too, right? Like, very different than when you're the one that makes.
Especially when you're playing, like when the crowd was 90% Kansas fans.
Big time. That makes total sense. With like you mentioned a few of the names on there. I mean, you guys obviously have the distinction, and we'll go to a couple of those next games, but you have the distinction of beating 3 number ones, and that that was kind of the start of it. What you said about what Coach Olson said about they got to worry about us, I think it's a great point, and I'm sure you've probably got plenty of things throughout your coaching career that would attest to this, that one of the most powerful things a coach can do is help their guys think just a little differently. Like, just get out of their own head and just think a little differently, be a little more free, and break away from it. And it sounds like that had that effect in whatever way, just to think about it differently. And that a lot of different ways you can frame it, but I think that's a really cool story. And obviously winning like that obviously must have been a lot of confidence. What was the celebration like after beating them that game, knowing that it was like that?
Well, I'll let Bennett jump in on that. I'll say one thing. One is Coach Olson was a big believer in quickness, and the less you think, the quicker you are on your feet. The more you think, the slower you are on your feet. And so, just keeping things simple in that, because we were not a real complicated team in the stuff that we did. I mean, it was not like some sophisticated, system. We were pretty simple, but we just had really good players, and the genius of the coach, he allowed the players to be creative and make the plays that needed to make plays. I would also tell you that to answer your question, after the game versus Kansas, when we won the game, obviously there was tons of excitement and celebration, but Coach reminded us that that's not the championship, because the next game or the Sunday afternoon, we had to play at the time Providence, and people, a lot of people forget about this. We had to go to overtime to beat Providence, and if we had lost to Providence, us 3 wouldn't be sitting here today. And it's sort of like, it reminded me, like, everyone talks about, again, it's not the same thing, but in sort of the, back in 1980, the Miracle of Ice, when the USA hockey team, a bunch of college guys beat, Russia in 19, and they called it the Miracle. Do you believe in miracles? When Al Michael said that. What people don't know, and if you watch that movie, if you watch that movie, that wasn't the gold medal game. They still had to win the gold medal. Same thing with us. Yes, we beat the number 1 seed, but we still didn't have the gold medal yet to win the national championship. And I remember in that movie, the coach turned, and he says this too, and he says it in, he tells the team, if you effing lose this game, you'll live with it the rest of your life. Meaning that you can't, like, the Russia game they beat was over. The next game they played was for the championship. And he said, if you effing lose this game, you'll regret this for the rest of your life. And so it was sort of like, Coach didn't use any profanity, but it was sort of like that mentality that he had to get us, because in a quick 48-hour time field turnaround, had to get us back ready to go to beat Providence. Because again, if you lose that game, you lose everything of all the goodwill you had on just beating Kansas. And so to be able to kind of recenter, get back in what we needed to do, and then win the game in overtime, was a heck of a deal to go to the Final Four.
And kind of going through that and beating beating that, Providence team, at what point, like, did you guys start to see, some of the, that separation with the talent, right? I mean, I look at the years, and I was in high school getting ready to go play in college, like chasing that. So for me, very vivid memories of this as well. Like, this was like a ton of fun for me to watch. I was at that point when this is, my dream. So I remember a lot of the things that Miles Simon did and Mike Bibby did, like some of the shots and, the excitement around it. That Providence game in the overtime and getting the win and then moving on to the Final Four. Let's move towards like some of those games, because those last couple of games, those are obviously legendary games against guys within programs that are legendary programs that blue chip, blue blood programs, and you guys ended up I'm sure at different points having to not only adjust and figure it out, but probably at a certain point just started to play as free as possible, because you almost were like house money, had finally figured out this is where we're at. So talk a little about that.
Well, so as when I was working at television, or in my point earlier about even being a head coach, anywhere I go, I tell people that it's the greatest tournament run that's ever in the history of the NCAA is our 97 team. Why? Because we beat 3 number 1 seeds. We're the only team in the history to ever do that to this point. And we're the first team in the history ever to win a national championship with a freshman starting point guard. Now, back in the day with UCLA and all that, freshmen were ineligible per the rules. And it's been done since then with the freshman guard, but never since to that. We were the first team ever with a freshman starting point guard to win the national championship. So those two things make it, to me, the greatest run ever. And the 3 number 1 seeds we beat, Kansas, North Carolina, and Kentucky, are the 3 winningest programs in all of college basketball. Now, when you're talking about the Final Four and playing North Carolina, as I mentioned, the first game of the season, we beat them. And here we are, pretty much, 5 months later down the road, playing them again in Dean Smith's very last game, the legendary Dean Smith. And North Carolina was loaded. I mean, they had Antoine Jameson, Vince Carter. They had a lot of really good players. It was North Carolina. And nobody would, and anyone that was picking the Final Four, no one obviously would pick us. And in that game versus North Carolina, we were down early, like 18-7, 21-9. And then we started kind of just fighting our way back. And part of the way we fought our way back, Mike Bibby hit some huge threes. Some of the things that we did offensively, and again, when I talked about earlier about like Bennett and AJ being sort of like the offensive linemen that don't get a lot of credit, the way we did in football, the way we did our offense, we ran a very motion-oriented offense with a lot of weak side passing, meaning skip passings. We would skip it over, and the big Bennett or AJ, one would be on the ball side posting, but the weak side guy would be screening all the time. They were really good screeners, great screeners. And so in that game, Bibby hit multiple big threes, partly because of the screening by Bennett and by AJ Bramlett, and because we would play skip a lot. We would drive it and throw it over the screener, which would be Bennett and or AJ, and that got him a lot of open looks, and that allowed us to get back in the game and then eventually take the lead because of our shooting. Our 4 perimeter guys, Michael Dickerson did not shoot well in that game, but the other 3 were really at a high clip. And then Bennett and AJ just were so good, just screening defensively.
Well, with Lute Olson grabbing us with those big hands every day, he's like, it's not like this, it's like this. I mean, you couldn't hit him, all these things. You couldn't hit water falling out of a boat. You got to screen like this kind of thing.
That's right. And so, and that's where I'm going to have to use that, by the way, Bennett, for my own team.
Couldn't hit a broadside of a barn.
Yeah. I use some of those. You're not more ready to play than the man on the moon. You know what I mean? And, he used that one, or don't give the ball a headache, or you know what I mean? And don't massage the ball. But that was part of the thing, and so we were able to beat North Carolina, and then you go on and play Kentucky in the national championship game. So I just mentioned about the game with Dean Smith's last game. It was actually then the next game we played in Kentucky against Rick Pitino, and it was his last game before he was going to then eventually take the Boston Celtics job. And the previous year before, Kentucky had won the national championship, and that was a great game because Kentucky pressed the entire game. But what was interesting with Coach Olson, every day in practice, we would work against the press. We didn't really like press, but we just worked against it. We did ball handling every single day. We did ball handling drills every single day. And one of the drills in the ball handling drill is we would dribble it and back it out 2 dribbles and then cross it over and go to the other side, like you're visualizing backing out of the trap. Yep. And then we play 5-on-5 against a trap, against each other, pressing every day.
6-on-5 or 5-on-6 also.
We just do different things in preparation, not for teams weren't pressing like crazy but I remember before the game, Coach mentioned that we've done this every single day in our preparation for this. And again, he was right. Our ability to handle the press against Kentucky was the reason we were able to win the game.
It really didn't even affect us. I don't think we never turned the ball over or.
Nope. And Kentucky, and that's what Kentucky does is with Rick Pitino at that time, they forced turnovers like crazy. And that allowed us to win the game. Now we had to go into overtime to win the game. Now people, again, we missed a shot late. But then they missed a shot late, and then we went in overtime. And the unsung hero in that game, as good as Bennett and AJ and everyone, was Bennett's and AJ's backup, Donnell Harris, in overtime, made incredible amount of free throws that you wouldn't believe, like 4 huge free throws.
They won the championship with free throws.
That's exactly right, in overtime. And Donnell Harris, who wasn't used a lot. He was about 6'10", but he was about as thick as Bennett's arm. And for many reasons. But you use that comparison. But I will say that he came in and made incredible free throws, and he literally won us the game because of his ability to make the free throws down the stretch. And you win the national championship because of that. And that was our 3rd number 1 seed. You know, it was interesting. The year before, Kentucky won the national championship in 1996. We beat Kentucky in 1997. Rick Pitino goes to the Boston Celtics. Tubby Smith comes in and takes over Rick Pitino, and they win it in 1998. If Rick Pitino did not leave during that time, he would have the most wins, like where Mike Krzyzewski is. But I think our game probably, you think about how much history changed, whether it was Dean Smith or Rick Pitino or Roy Williams at Kansas, because that was Roy Williams ended up winning 3 championships at North Carolina. But just a change of history on how that went with that 97 run. And that is why I say it's the greatest tournament run in the history, was because of 3 1 seeds that we beat, starting freshman point guard. No one expected us to do it. Coming into the tournament, losing the last 2 games, all the tension that we had. We had 2 overtime wins during the course of the game. It was just an incredible run.
Yeah, I think if you took all those 6 games and you added up the difference besides that overtime and the championship game, it was only like 11 points or something. It was like every game was won by 1 or 2 points or something.
Yeah, that's right. It was, and that's where the Cardiac Cats name became known.
Plus all the old people in Tucson, all the gray hairs.
Yeah, there you go.
That's incredible. I have to share this because you mentioned some funny, Olsen-isms and stuff. And since you are the head figure of the former Tark the Shark, I'll have to give you a Tark the Shark one that he said, and I've heard and I've repeated, and I think it's still one of the funniest ones ever. He used to, at any time we played poorly, and I know he did this at UNLV as well as at Fresno State. He would come in and go, next time you guys go and pick up your scholarship check, wear a mask and bring a weapon because you're robbing a university.
That's a good one. And that's a really good one. We can use that now with NIL money. You know what I mean? We can use it not producing. But you know what? You're talking about Coach Tarkanian, and to both Tarkanian and Coach Lute Olson. Lute Olson and Coach Tarkanian, when Coach Tarkanian was at UNLV, those two guys did not get along. Part of it, they two had the best programs in the West Coast, obviously Arizona and UNLV at the time. They really butted heads. They did not like each other. They both, because Coach Olson followed Coach Tarkanian at Long Beach City College. And there were some things said and some other different things. And those two, and they butted heads in recruiting. Now, part of it was because they were the two premier programs. You understand about being in sports.
The competitive landscape. What else? You're not going to be best friends.
Yeah, you're competing for the same players. It's just they didn't get along, and there was a lot of like tension between two programs on that. What's interesting, when Coach Olson retired and Coach Tarkanian retired, Coach Tarkanian had a radio show here in Las Vegas, and he had Coach Olson on, and they kind of mended fences. And obviously both men, God rest both their souls, they both passed away, but they kind of mended fences at the time and towards the end there, and became actually friends at the end. But it was interesting with those two guys, and probably each coach raised each other's level of ability to perform. And that's what's great about sports, the competition factor of it, because if you're a competitor, you don't want your competitor to get ahead of you, and you're going to work that much harder and be more driven.
Accept the challenge.
Yeah, it's a challenge thing, and and all three of us understand that. That's what brings the best out of you at sports. Sports, just like the '97 team. I look at, like, my best friends are from that '97 team. My best memories are from that '97 team, and it's what I feel bad about in this day and age. That has got lost because you can literally play 4 years and go to 4 different schools. You look at Bennett. I was with him for 2 years. Bennett's one of my dear friends. I love the guy. I would if there was a
within
bus
5 minutes
coming,
he's responding. Yep.
Yeah, if there's a bus coming, I would push Bennett out of the way and I would take the hit on the bus. That's how I feel about it. And that's for all my teammates there. What's interesting in this climate, it's not the same anymore because of guys moving and transferring and all that. And so I try to explain to people, like, be careful what you wish for. You want all these changes with the college game.
Yep.
You lose what us three are doing right here because, and you understand this too, playing for Coach Tarkanian at Fred. You understand it's a different mentality. Like, that's your home base is Fresno State. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, that's your school, and as in terms of that. So anyway, that's just some of the thoughts.
I think
it's a great point. I talk about it a lot on this podcast, honestly, Josh, a lot just about it, because a lot of the guys that I played with, right, are in coaching, like you, right? Like you mentioned, Bill Musselman, Eric Musselman, one of my good friends, longtime friends, former teammates, Gus Argenal, worked with Eric for years and now is over at UC Riverside. Robert Eson's now the head coach over at UC Chicago, Illinois, after a UAB run. Jesse Pruitt, another good buddy, is an assistant out at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. The list goes on and on, right, of just guys I played with that are coaching like you. And there's also a ton of guys that aren't in it, that have, went on to have pro careers and are retired, and just, like you said, stay close with and talk to. And we talk all the time with the guys that are in coaching about NIL and the transfer portal and like how it's evolved and changed the game. My career would have been different if it existed. I always say that because it would have given me some different options, because Coach Tarkanian retired shortly, before my career ended, which kind of forced me to look differently. But I made the best out of it, and it taught me toughness and a lot of things that I to this day am more grateful for than anything. But the thing that I would love to get your take, because you're now leading a program. The thing that I consistently hear is the importance of building relationships with your guys and how fast and how important it is in today's day and age because of the way the world of basketball is. It's a lot harder. I mean, we all know there were guys in programs that never got a fair shake, kind of got stuck in a corner by coaches that maybe weren't treated, didn't get great shots. Today's coaches, you have to approach it differently. Like, how do you see coaching today differently, Josh? I mean, you're leading a great program, and you have to deal with everything you just touched on.
Yeah, a few things. One is, probably now more so than ever, it's sort of like speed dating. I mean, you have to make decisions on guys. Like for this year, the portal opens April 7th. Well, okay, let's say if you were playing and you and Bennett were at school A and B and you both went in the portal, well, there's 100 schools recruiting you. I have to make a decision on between one of you two. One, I got to find out, are you even on a price range, or are you asking for too much money? Two, are you good enough? Do you fit what we're trying to do? And I have to make that decision in days. Three, like I got to figure out all
person. I mean,
yeah,
that's what
like I was going to say, you got to figure out all their character. Like, who are you? Like, you got you don't have time, because see, in football with this portal and NIL, there's 105 players on the roster. You can have some mistakes. You can make some mistakes and be okay. When you're talking in basketball, and you both know this, if some of your better players you make mistakes on, you can't recover from it. Like, it's just it's because you have to almost be darn perfect in this evaluation part. And I tell this to my bosses, and I tell this to fans. Hey, I get it. We're all paid good money, and this is what we signed up for. But the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars in trying to get the draft process right and drafting the right person. And they probably all only get it right 50% of the time. And they spend years and millions to trying to figure it out. We are trying to make these decisions literally in 2, 3, 4 days, a week at the most, that can affect your livelihood of your career. And because as you mentioned, I feel it like, okay, we're in year one of this. This is a rebuild when I took over. Everybody wants the great days of the Coach Tarkanian days, of the glory days. Well, I mean, it's different time period. I told people Stacey Augmon and Larry Johnson aren't walking through that door unless you're going to write me a $10 million check. Otherwise, it's not reality. And so because of that, it's a rebuild. So, and I know we've had a good first year of a rebuild of what we've done. I'm making great steps, but I know we got to make a great strides in year two. And in year two, it's going to come down to, okay, we got to make sure who we sign, what we do. And I feel it today with the pressure of it, that because I know when April 7th hits, this isn't like a 3-month ordeal where you can kind of really navigate and check and be sure. Man, you have to make decisions that are going to affect your livelihood over 3-4 days. Then on top of that, think about this. Because you're talking to your coaching buddies about the NIL. Okay, if I'm watching, how do I know how much you're worth as in terms of a player? Like, to me, that's the hardest part. Like, what's your market value? I know it only takes one person to say things, but if you have an agent and they're all trying to change the price up a little bit, I've got to decide, okay, am I willing to pay this number for you or not? Yep. And to me, that's a really hard part. I'm like, hey, you know what? I think this is my budget. This is what we can do. If you don't like it, I got to go to the next guy. And now there are some positives with this climate that you don't have to waste time, because when you two guys are coming up, you spend 2-3 years recruiting you get the 5 official visits. If it doesn't work out, it's crushing. It's, there's a lot of time wasted during that point of there's no time wasted. It's extremely efficient, but your decision-making, and you see coaches around the country that get let go. Part of it was because they paid high money to guys that didn't work out on the floor. Yep. Not the coach's fault. It's just the player wasn't as good as maybe. And what happens is when you're going to the donor asking, I need this money, and the player doesn't work out, guess what the donor becomes? The owner. Donors become owners, and you know what they go to? Man, I'm not giving you any more money. Get rid of the coach. Just like what happens in the NBA. And that's where it's kind of gone to in our world of college basketball. And that's where I just talked about, like, both of you guys, you talked about, for all three of us, your experiences, your teammates, the college experience, the atmosphere,
road trips, hotels, and buses and airports.
And you mentioned it. It's still about relationships, but it could be a 7 to 9 month deal, because when the season's over, you might have to go get a whole new team, and all those guys are at another, and you could be playing them next year because they could transfer within your conference. So it's a totally different ordeal, more so than ever before.
I think it's incredible to hear you describe it. When I look at like
explanation.
My first year at Fresno, we were top 12. Melvin Eli was the guy. Chris Jeffries, I had imposter syndrome. Bennett knows this. Chris used to just absolutely destroy me regularly, and I was fortunate, like you mentioned. Bennett talked about you being the shot doctor. John Welch was really who recruited me, and he taught me more in like 1 year than anyone in 20 years about how to be a one-on-one player and shooting and that consistency that you guys talked about. I'm certain that's a part of what helped you guys win, because it adds up. I know I felt a tremendous amount of pride when I got a chance at Chico State for a couple of years. I went and coached with Greg Klink, who was an assistant while I was during my time at Davis, and I got to give some of that back to guys. And when you see guys develop and grow, there's a huge reward there. Not only do I think it's difficult to not have that time, but I think the part that you just touched on that I think maybe somewhat wasn't hit is like when you hit on a guy and you nail it, and then they're everything you wanted them to be. Now you got to deal with the fact that they may be getting an offer for another number at a program that you can't match elsewhere.
But here's what I would tell you, and that's part of the embracing part. Like you're right. We're not gonna have maybe the same budget as University of Arizona or Kansas or Duke. So you have to have in your mind know that if you have a guy that comes in, plays really well, you almost got to look at it in some of these schools, and again, you can't shy away from it. It's just you've helped them, and it might be a little bit. A lot of schools now are like junior colleges for the Power 4 schools, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
for the Power 4 leagues, because if you come into UNLV and play, we're going to do all we can to keep you, but there's also at some point a limit. And if you can triple your salary somewhere else, just as you two would do, you'd probably go take it. And
exactly.
And that's just the reality of the game. And until I think there's three things that need to happen for there to be any calmness and structure, because right now there's none. One, there needs to be a cap at some point. Okay, that's the problem. So my ability to spend is here. Another school can be here. Another school could be here. It's just so. Whereas and I get in pro sports, there's only 30 teams, 32 teams, whatever. You're all under the same cap, or there's a hit, or you get fined a heavy luxury tax. So there's no cap in college. Everyone's just at this different rates of wild spending. But you can't have a cap. Because if there was a cap, you get sued. And right now the NCAA has lost more lawsuits than anything. So they don't want to get sued. So the only two ways to course correct this is there's got to be a federal law, an antitrust law, that all 50 states are under the same guidelines. Because right now every state is different. And anytime you want to challenge something, you just go to the judge and you get an injunction and you win. The only way this will stop is either one, there's got to be a federal antitrust, so and that way it's approved by Congress and the Senate, and that way if they try to sue something, they can't win it because it's already, you can't do it then.
Federal.
Or there has to be a collective bargaining agreement, and you might have to make the players employees. They might not want that, but that's the reality of it, because but anything other than a collective bargaining agreement or a federal law there's just nothing, anything in between. We're just going to be, it's just like, it's like a hamster wheel. We can all talk about it and be this and be that. And it's just going to keep spinning. And it doesn't, you're literally
10,000 hamsters running in that same wheel.
But those are the only two ways. And when you get one of those two ways, you can eventually put a cap, and there can be some normalcy. But right now, you're just not. And so, but sitting in my chair, you can sit and complain about it or be upset about it. But if you are not, as I call it, wearing loose fit clothing and being adaptable and willing to change and being positive about it, you're just going to get left behind, because this is the deal, and it's not going anywhere. And if you try to, slam your head against the wall about all the time, you might as well not coach and not coach in this climate, in this profession anymore.
Well, being adaptable is really what life's all about, right? The changes, and like, I think everybody I know that's in the game, like, can you really tell a kid that has an opportunity to get life-changing money, or money that can really set themselves up, no, they shouldn't take it? That's very difficult to stand by what most coaches are in the business for and not want to help them succeed in that way. But it's also like negotiating with like a 17, 18-year-old. There's a lot of things at 17, 18 years old. The last thing I should be doing is negotiating with my, less.
Yeah, well, you could go over to Europe and not get paid for 4 months of your salary that you're guaranteed. Then you're living overseas, and they won't even get you a flight home. So there's also those things going on.
Well, and I know I got to run here in a second because I got a meeting I got to go to. But I want to just say this: everyone has agents now, which is, when you guys played, like, if you talked the word agent, you'd be going to jail. I'd be like, now you think about high school freshmen, high school sophomores, they all have agents. Everyone has, it's a totally different world. And for you two who played at a very high level, and you obviously coached, so you have but you didn't coach in today's with it. So if you came and coached today, or Bennett came and played today, you both would be, your head would be like, what? No way. It'd be, here's how I would make it equivalent to. It would be like somebody was born in 1900. They went into a coma, and they just woke up today. What, like, cell phone? What is this? You know what I mean? Like, what airplanes, cars? You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's how it would be. That's what it's equivalent to, back to where you guys came from. If we dropped you in the game today, you'd be like, this is, because people compare it to professional sports. It's not. Professional sports, there's all kinds of guidelines, structures, rules. There is nothing right now. I mean, it is a wild time. And, and I said the only ways to get it calmed down would be those two ways.
That's perfectly said. And again, makes the run that you guys did at Arizona, to me, agree, one of the most special ones maybe ever, like you said. But I think it's also creating an environment where almost every year now it feels like it's a team that kind of has to do what you guys did as far as coming together in one season and figuring it out, because most of them are being put together year by year. So I don't know that, the run and beating the 3 number ones and all of that, can be topped. But I think it is interesting to try to build chemistry in one season with a group and then go win a title. That is something that is to be marveled at. But everybody's got
to think about it. We win the title, and we had our entire team come back in 1998. Now, we lost we should have gone back-to-back championships. That year, we were the best team in the country. We lost to Utah. But in this day and age, that would not have happened. We'd have lost our entire team, because they would have their market value would have been so high that we would have started brand new. So that would be the thing. And you look at this year's, look at the 4 number 1 seeds, whether it's Arizona or Michigan. I mean, doesn't matter who you look at. Duke,
Houston.
what's that? Yeah, Houston's a 2. Houston's a
they're a
2
2 seed, but they've been in the top.
Or look at Florida, who won the championship last year.
Yeah.
All 4 teams have new teams this year. I mean, they might have 1 or 2 returning guys, but 90% of their team is Florida. They basically have a brand new team. So Duke has everyone has Michigan has a brand new team. And so that's the world that we're in. And next year, everyone will be, like guys who at Arizona will transfer to UCLA to Arizona, Michigan.
Yeah, why buy a jersey?
Guys transfer from Michigan to Ohio State to Michigan. That would never even be fathomable back in the day. Different.
I got one thing to say about Josh. One of my coaches, Coach Burton, says, I may not be the smartest coach, but I do know how to steal from good coaches. I still find myself working on those, curling and pointing those toes, following through the same things that I learned with Josh. So I want to thank you for not being such a good teammate, for being such a good teammate, but also a good coach and a good person. So you have the triple factor. I appreciate the time that we spent in those years together.
Thanks for having me on, gentlemen, and I appreciate it. And we'll stay connected, and looking forward to seeing how this tournament run goes. And you do know that you don't want anyone to beat 3 number 1s, because that keeps you in the allure of the record book.
That's right. That's right. Well, really, really appreciate it, Josh. Thank you so much for making the time. Good luck in the film session, and good luck this coming Saturday, man. And look forward to chatting again soon.
Okay, thanks, guys. See you, Bennett.
Okay, Josh. All right, Phil.